On April 12th, put it on your calendar, you heard? April 12th, we have Chiron conjunct the sun in opposition to the moon in Libra. This is a full moon Libra. Full moon in Libra. There's so much that could be said about this, and hopefully I can cover enough to justify what it really means. Now, first off, it forms a cross. Forms a cross where this brings into play Aries, Libra, Cancer, last minutes of Cancer, and Aquarius as an opposition. That is Mars and Pluto opposition. It's forming a T. So all four of these points, it expresses something. And what it expresses is a completion. Congratulations. With the sun conjunct Chiron in opposition to the moon, it's a homecoming event, cosmically, of you finally finding a place in yourself where you have full acceptance, confidence, and clarity about what it all meant, what it all was for. And at this point, you no longer need the catalyst of Libra to cast the image of the self at Aries, which is the authentic expression of the self. The pain has served its purpose. It has accomplished what it came to do, which is revealed to you what is unique about you, where your strengths are at, where your wisdom is at, that now becomes the antidote. The wounded now becomes the healer. The sun is illuminating Chiron and is bringing light to the wound. And that allows you to see what the suffering was all about, where it came from, and it's opening your heart to realize the value in all that you suffered, the value in all that you've gone through and what you have endured. And you're seeing now what perseverance can accomplish for you. And this becomes a healing slope downwards that is without resistance perpetually, in which the snowball gets bigger of the beneficial effect of having overcome such pains and resistance to your identity, the natural state of the self, the authentic expression of the self. It's now accomplished. With it being accomplished, in opposition, you have the moon at Libra, and the full moon is basically culminating the burdens that went with that learning process. The burdens that went with the learning process of what Chiron was there to teach us. It had everything to do with the South Node Libra context of consciousness, which is the surface mind. The surface mind, the airhead mentality, the emotional codependence that we had, in which we depended and relied upon the permission of others, the opinion of others, the celebration and validation of others. And we relied upon the comment section to tell us what to think or what to feel. It's where the public opinion formed our consciousness and thought process. A choir of the same notes and the same instrument. What a boring song. But now you see yourself as the trombone, and you appreciate the person who is the flute, and you celebrate the person who's on the drums, and you celebrate the person who is the violin, and you see how beautiful it can be once your self-esteem is now restored. And you no longer see competition, but you see alliance. You see alliance. That's what happens after we heal this part. When the sun comes to Chiron, it helps us to realize ourselves as alliances of others, not opponents of others. Because our self-esteem is now intact. The pain is not antagonizing, but it's quite awakening as a proof and evidence of who we were to become and what it takes to become it. Libra and Aries as an axis in and of itself, even without Chiron, even without the full moon, it is the axis of twin flame dynamics. And twin flame dynamics being behind this, it is enhanced as a learning catalyst. This is where society in and of itself, the public in and of itself, communities, wherever you have this Libra placement is where you were quite reliant and dependent upon the approval and opinion of others. And you tended to love others more than yourself, prioritize others more than your inner child. You tended to downplay yourself in order not to face rejection. You betrayed yourself in order to find yourself as accepted in others' eyes, in sight, in the group. You wanted to be a part through relationships of a whole. And the error that we made was to sell ourselves and betray ourselves. Imagine the one who betrays their self to have a sense of belonging with someone. Imagine someone who betrays others to fulfill their own selfish aims. The runner and the chaser, twin flame dynamic. The codependent and the narcissist. Divine masculine, divine feminine. Adolescent energy. Unevolved energy. This energy without depth, without wisdom. We meet our twin flames in life when we are too surface to make contact with the heart, too surface to make contact with the meaning in life, the spiritual forces that we walk with, our inner compass, our divine guides within the self. Something has to crack open the shell that prevents the light from entering. And that's the twin flame. Passion is the lure. Desire is the lure. Venus is the lure. You come together through Venus. The lust, the desire, the passion, the impulse. And under that fire of passion, you are chasing something shiny, something attractive, a quick fix, something that you could find yourself addicted to, seeking ecstasy. And all of it equals an escape from the self, nonetheless, and the work that's calling you. But what's ironic about it is the same person who you run to for these results and outcomes, it becomes a trick. And the trick is that you are lured in by the honey and by the sweet fragrance. You are lured in by the passion. And as soon as you step into that person or those persons, the door locks behind you and you can't find a way out. The universal forces has fused you together. And now the powers that are in you and the powers that are in the other person, it subjects you to a very deep lesson. A lesson that begins with the shock of great pain. The shock of great pain. And this is disillusionment over and over again. Fulfilling the definition of insanity. Taking each other up on heights and slamming each other down to the underworld. NYPD is outside. You're constantly in drama with these karmic forces, these individuals, these people or persons. It's a confusing picture from the outside to an untrained eye. Why are they together? Why don't they just leave? Why don't they just go their separate ways? But twin flames are not like that. They have an assignment with each other. And they're there to give each other enough pain to awaken. Enough pain to generate the desire for understanding. Enough burden to generate the desire for new wisdom to enter the body through philosophy. And that can't begin until that shocking pain devastates the soul and the heart. Taking the one who is high off of the addiction of passion into a sober state within the self, putting the pieces back together. From whence has this come? Why do I keep going through this? Why can I not control this situation or control this person, control the outcome? And so likewise, this twin flame dynamic was us versus the public. Aries, the identity of the self, the singularity of the self, represents the runner. Libra represents the chaser. Imagine a spirit in the society that's chasing us, and we're too consumed with ourselves to see or realize what's really taking place. A society or a public people that's emotionally codependent upon identifying with the treasures of people, but not with any meaning anywhere, exploiting each other, using each other, doing each other in, manipulation, backhanded deals, betrayal. These were during the days of the South Node Libra transit and 11 years prior to that, where we were learning the lessons about being rejected, not fitting in, and how cold that was. And it was so cold and so scary to be outside of the popular groups, the pop culture, the in crowd, the attractive people, the funny people, the charismatic people, the people who have many followers and the people who have many views. We are afraid to be outside of that door. And our negotiations were quite imbalanced, to where we underestimated the value of the soul and we sold it in order to be a part, in order to belong, to fit in, to not be rejected. Rejection was the greatest pain of all, the greatest fear of all. Don't reject me. Don't abandon me. Look what we were doing to avoid that. But the truth is, abandonment and rejection, there is only one experience of abandonment and rejection. And therefrom, it is reflected in every other event that you have in your life. And that experience is only with the parents, the early household. And it lived in you. If the parent was narcissistic, you became codependent. Libra, South Node. If the parent was codependent, you became narcissistic. Aries, North Node. And you lived it out. And you ran into your opposite to begin the healing, to begin the knowing. Misunderstanding and mistaking every person in your life who you had these fallouts with, these power struggles with. Oh, it's them. Look what they're doing. Look what they did. It makes no sense. It's not right. It's not fair. This is not just. I'm hurt. I'm wronged. But it was only your mother. It was only your father. It was no one else. And they came in different forms to give you the chance to heal what you didn't early on. Humility is what begins the blessings of the student. Without humility, we do not learn, because when self is in the way, we cannot absorb. Severe blows to the ego, severe blows to the ideals and concepts of the self that were quite unrealistic and unattainable. And that Chiron was a painful step in that direction of delusion. Every time we stepped in the direction of the true self, it ached, it hurt, it was painful because of the feedback that we would get or the feedback that we would not get as a result of being ourselves. And then we end up having the cookie cutter society where everybody looks alike, thinks alike, talks alike. Everybody is just alike. Nobody is their self. The culture. Contradicting wisdom, contradicting truth, contradicting justice, contradicting even logic, where critical thinking was alien from the family unit, and that left with the fathers. Critical thinking left with the fathers. Let me say again, critical thinking left with the fathers. No amount of college education can bless you with critical thinking. College education is liberalism. You cannot have college education without liberal brainwashing, which takes away your critical thought, which takes away your trust in your instincts. It takes away your independent thought. And it conforms you to a liberal perception and mindset. And with a society that's been dominated by the powers and influences of women experiencing their first days of freedom and liberation, America painted pink, the West painted pink. Critical thinking was something far in history that we have already sailed away from. And our children are not born with critical thinking. Their parents are not born with critical thinking. And the grandparents were the last generation of those who had critical thinking. The 80s babies. So whatever comes up on the news, whatever is said followed by popular opinion, if it has enough likes, if it has enough shares, if it has enough comments in this comment section, that is what you go with, that is what you believe. You accept that interpretation. But you cannot arrive at the truth from your own heart, from your own conviction, because you don't trust it. You don't trust your own heart. You don't trust your own conviction. You only trust what you hear. You only trust what somebody else says. You look for the prettiest girl in the group and you go with what she says and does. You follow her standards. You dance to her tune. And this is how women of society think. They follow the prettiest woman. They worship the prettiest woman. They pattern their thoughts, their judgment, their opinions, their logic, their reasoning after what the prettiest woman does or says. They get on code. And the males do whatever gets the attention of the females. And with that being said, the males become degenerate because the females themselves are degenerate, because it's the only way they can have access to a degenerate female is if they themselves are degenerate. This has been cleaned up. The hurt and the pain of stepping in those shoes that fit you, it's a painful walk. A few corners where you grow bunions, calluses, you have to wear them in. It hurts to be yourself, is what this Chiron at Aries said. It hurts to be your real self, because the things that you really want to do, the things that you really believe in, what you really are about, you would be in pure isolation if you dove into it. If you really showed up for it in full heart, you would find yourself betrayed and in isolation. Everybody would walk away from you. Everyone would turn away from you. But what does that tell you? It tells you that you surrounded yourself with a lie. You surrounded yourself with people who help you and enable you to lie to yourself time and time again. People who tell you what you want to hear, and people who show you what you want to see. People who help you to feel the way that you want to feel about your lie. Look at the sisterhood. There's not a greater lie behind women than the sisterhood. Females are trusting the sisterhood to tell them if they look decent when they walk out the house, to tell them what they should do about their relationship, to tell them if they should divorce or not, to tell them how they should handle issues between them and their baby daddies or husbands or fathers, how they should solve issues or problems. And the worst advice that a woman can get is from other women. That is the worst place a woman in America can get advice, is from other women. She will strike the wrong direction every single time. They have an illusion of unity, an illusion of togetherness, an illusion of having each other's back. But the truth is, females are in competition, deep competition with each other in America. They don't get dressed for men. They don't doll themselves up for men. They don't beautify themselves for men. They do it to feel in competition with other women. And what does this come back to? Low self-esteem. And what is that from? Chiron Aries. There's low self-esteem in the true self because the true self has not been nurtured. And with low self-esteem, you see competition, not alliance. And American women do not have alliance. They're in competition, secret competition with each other. They see scarcity when it comes to men. They see scarcity when it comes to dating selections and options. They see scarcity when it comes to getting in relationships. They feel threatened anytime they're in a relationship by anyone who is as beautiful or more beautiful than herself. These women in America are very insecure. They don't know themselves. They don't feel comfortable in themselves because nobody taught them. Nobody taught them. Nobody demonstrated it. Nobody showed them how. This sun coming to the Aries placement, this is a time where the light of the sun or your own heart, deep wisdom, it causes you to realize what you didn't realize before. Like, wait a minute. My struggles, it makes me special. What I suffered, it didn't leave me empty-handed. It left me with abundance. It gave me value. It gave me much to offer. It gave me a role. It gave me a part to play. It gave me a service that I have to offer. The wounded are the ones who are the healers. And this is where you start to see the power of healing that you have with yourself, that you have to offer. And it came from your suffering. It came from learning obedience. Strikes to your self-esteem, strikes to your confidence. It helped you to turn to that Cancer aspect that's been emphasized since the March since the Mars retrograde, to pour in and nurture the self, the true self, to make contact with the inner child, to free the voice of the inner child through the Mars Leo, through the Leo Mars, to reawaken and restand the child, the inner child, within the self. Where do we find a unity of the same process right now in transit? Well, where we find that unity is at the South Node Virgo, wielding the number 9. And that's what the number 9 Virgo process is all about. It's birthing Christ Jesus. It's where Mary gives birth to Jesus. Isis with Osiris sitting on the lap, reviving and restoring the life of the inner child. The voice of the heart, the 5th house Leo, Christ, S-U-N, the Son. Through the process of Virgo, isolation, the Hermit card, transforming isolation into solitude based on the acceptance that we learn to have. And when we have that acceptance, we see the richness, the abundance that is with us, the sustenance that is there in that solitude, the empowerment that is there in that solitude, sorting out the pieces of the pain, noticing the jewels, the gifts, the wealth, the richness in all of the suffering. Many of us suffered injustices, betrayal, hatred, oppression, antagonism. We suffered many things behind this, and it was simply based on you being who you really are. When you are the ideal of the public, it's all good. Everybody embrace you. They bring you in, they celebrate you, they give you money, they pay for your service, they buy services from you, they give you clout, they raise you up in the air. But the moment that you stand on the side of truth, the audience is empty, the audience is quiet, the money slows down, and it's nobody but you and God. And you look and you say, well, how can I be myself if you will not provide for me in being in myself? But that's the time where God shows you that I am source. And when God is source, you start to see the difference between source and resource. You start to see that when you have self-determination, everything around you is value and resource because you have self-determination. Self-determination that came from connecting with the self. You can turn anything into value. You can bring value out of anything, and you can turn anything into money if your imagination becomes pure, clean enough through salvation, the innocence that you're able to obtain. The more innocence that you allow yourself to have, the greater your creativity and imagination. Innocence and imagination is one. Innocence and creativity is one. No one has a greater imagination than a child, because the child's innocence is pristine. It is superior. The more innocence that we learn to have through cleaning up and purging the soul, the self, through that isolation, getting away from the contamination of those who walk with these shadows and misunderstandings of the self, the chaos of self-betrayal. They are decorated on the outside. They are attractive on the outside. They are charismatic. They have palaces of wealth and possessions, things of this world. But inside, they are suffering. They are dark. They are against each other. They are divided in the hearts, secret enemies of each other. And you were among wolves with your throat exposed and didn't even know it. The full moon at Libra It closes out the lessons of emotional codependence. It closes out the lessons of self-betrayal. How long has the theme been going? Oh, he was narcissistic. She was narcissistic. That's why the relationship didn't work. So-and-so is narcissistic. The only word we learned was narcissism and the narcissistic person. That's as far as our focus went. But what we're forgetting is the duality, or the polarity, that is. Where there is a narcissist, there is a codependent. Where there is a runner, there is a chaser. Where there is a person who betrays others, there's a person who betrays the self. Which one is worse? Neither, because both of them are the same person. Don't tell me nothing about a narcissist if you're not able to also acknowledge that you yourself are codependent. The narcissist is charged with crimes against others, but the codependent is charged with the crime against the self. So you do the math on that. Don't be so quick to announce it so loud that you got away from somebody because they were a narcissist. Well, you've been getting away from yourself because you're codependent. And it had to be. The full moon Libra, it ends the story of complying and identifying with the public opinion, the comment section, what the pretty girls say and what the pretty girls think, what the handsome guys say and what the handsome guys think, what the charismatic people with cell phones in their face and bright lights. It ends the influence that they have over the hearts of the people. It ends the magnetism that they have. They no longer have power over people. This is taking Satan's power, Luciferic power, and diminishing it, destroying it, to where it no longer has control over the people unless we use our free will to choose and select that reality for ourselves. Unless. This ends that. It ends the story of feminism. It ends the prevail of liberalism. It ends the wild and chaotic women taking over society, dictating what our world is to be. It ends that. It is over now with this full moon. It closes that story entirely. And over the 6-month period, you are going to see, I am going to see, the unfolding of this dedication to the self, this commitment to the self, this honoring of the self in the people. Where no matter how pretty she is in front of the camera, how charismatic, how big her butt is, whatever else, how much clout she has, how popular she is with the culture, how many celebrities are standing behind, how charismatic, how much they represent the culture, name brand this and name brand that, celebrities and so on. The Democratic liberal left. These are all of the forces that's losing their leverage now. They will no longer be complied with. They will no longer be listened to. They will no longer be honored or respected. They now are in a karmic cycle of catching up to the frequencies that they can set themselves free by. And that's where they go. Concerning your Libra placement, it obviously rules over a house in your natal birth chart. This is where the story of codependence was taking place. And now you have found your real identity. You have found your unique, your own expression. And with the Sun conjunct Chiron, in opposition to this, it could mean that you would find reason to separate yourself, go another way, or communicate new standards, terms, boundaries, conditions at that house. What it also could look like is that fated lessons are no longer coming in this house, but your growth, your point of growth is going to come from its opposing house, which is Aries. The conjunction of the sun in Chiron, it signifies that you are on the other side now of low self-esteem. You are on the other side now of self-rejection. You're on the other side now of fearing the threat of betrayal, fearing the threat of mutiny. You're on the other side of fearing the threat of being abandoned. You're okay now. You accept it. And you accept others who wish to go another way. Because you have found your way of coexisting with yourself in harmony and peace. Because you made you made a place for yourself within the self. So this is a completion of the identity's autonomy. Having autonomy. You now have autonomy. And you have a realization of the gifts that pain has given you. You have a realization of the gifts that struggle and suffering has now rewarded you. It has given you the fruits of all of that suffering. That's something that can't be reversed. No one can take that from you. What you get and inherit as a result of you persevering through trials and pains, the reward has permanence in you unless you betray your own wisdom. Unless you betray your own wisdom. Mars at the same time is finishing up the last degrees of Cancer, which indicates you are closing the story of emotional dependence and validation from the feedback of others. You no longer are relying on the feedback of others. It's closing that story, is what that's indicating. That you're making peace now with your ability to pull out from the nipple of society, the nipple of people who you gave so much power to, the nipple of people who you're relying on to give you sustenance and security for the inner child. You now are self-sustained, and you don't need it or rely on that anymore. And for that reason, you will not exploit your motherly spirit to others. You will not exploit your motherly resources that you have to afford others. You will use wisdom and discretion instead. And from that point, your Cancer story turns into a Leo story. So at that cusp of Cancer and Leo, you want to know what house that is. At that point right there, you are no longer going to show up in the attitude and disposition of the Cancer. You now will show up in the attitude and disposition of the Leo. Understand? Which is the king or queen who shares its generosity, its abundance through generosity. And what abundance? The abundance afforded through Chiron. Chiron is giving you abundance from all of that suffering. And you will use that abundance to care for other people, to provide for other people. Because it's certainly a provision, what Chiron has given you. Deep wisdom. Wisdom coming together, what is that? That forms Aquarius. That wisdom is the water gourd. It's the pitcher of water that is depicted in symbolism of Aquarius. You are bringing wisdom. You are bringing water to the situation. Who can be an enemy to water is an African proverb. Who can be an enemy to water? Who can live without water? Who can say or claim that they don't need water? You are as unique and essential as water itself because of that Chiron. Now, Chiron and the sun will be conjunct at 23 degrees Aries, 23 degrees Aries. And that 23 degrees is exact. And I go on to explain the Sabian symbol which is a woman in pastel colors, carrying a heavy and valuable but veiled load. The rich potential of every moment and situation. This calls for us to be present, obviously. Assertiveness and desire together give birth to creative new possibilities. Creative assertiveness towards furtherment of potentials. That creativity is accessible to us through our innocence, through the clarity that we have as a result of doing this work. Making peace with that inner child. The inner child then rewards you with the powers of its creativity that nothing can imitate. Rich potential of every moment and situation. There's reason to be confident if we're present. It requires us to be present to align with this. Not grieving in what we're attached to of the past, not fearful of what we're reaching into the future to defend ourselves from. But living in such a way as where we generate good karma. We generate good energy. We put out good, so there's no reason to expect anything except good. When we live right, we can be present in a peace of mind. When we're not living right, we can't be present because we're always anticipating what we either fucked up or what's fucked up that's coming because we're fucked up. Assertiveness and desire together give birth to creative new possibilities. Yes, we have the confidence now to assert ourselves without hesitation or fear of someone disagreeing, rejecting, rebelling, pushing back. We've developed the skills to meet such oppositions because we learned that it's a selection of perception that we have that determines whether or not a person is an opponent or an ally. You have an opponent where someone decides that they want to be your opponent. You can turn that person into an ally if you have enough wisdom. Let me give you an example. A person might be jealous of you, and they're always challenging you. Every time you say something, they want to correct it. Every time you do something, they want to undermine it or be sarcastic. You know, the little sneaky things. But what if one day, for example, you came and you surprised them after, paying attention to their conversations, all these different things. Let's say they talk about softball all the time, right? And you surprise them by bringing a softball glove, to work, or a new bat, some cleats, something of that nature. A gift destroys an enemy. A gift destroys an enemy. So yes, they decided that they were an opponent, but you decided they're an ally. You just destroyed an enemy. You didn't destroy the person, you destroyed the enemy. You see the difference? You destroyed the enemy by something as simple as a gift. There are many ways to accomplish this, of course. But if we use wisdom, we have more power than what we could even keep up with. And we can assert ourselves without moving through an atmosphere of threat and lack. Low self-esteem makes very toxic and treacherous environments. Low self-esteem. You can water a person's self-esteem over time. And as you water their self-esteem over time, the enemy will transform into an ally. Because the only thing that made the person an enemy in the first place was more than likely fear or low self-esteem. And if you know this, you could start watering their self-esteem because obviously no one is watering them. No one is nurturing them. So by the time they get to you at work, they're showing up this way. They're always combative and going at it and making all these problems. But when we have understanding, when we have wisdom, we know that no one produces problems without having suffering in them. And part of that suffering could be they don't receive love. They don't receive kindness. Nobody pours into them. Nobody acknowledges and speaks to life their greater attributes and gifts. What makes them unique, special, important, or needed and desired? What makes them essential? You can highlight it. You could call it out. You could speak it out over time. And it could heal that person. Hey, you're really good at that. Maybe you could teach me how to do that. I always wanted to know how to do that. I like the way that you handled that situation. You really inspire me a lot. I've been watching you. Little things like that, you could water the person. And as their self-esteem becomes enriched, their assaults and their offenses, it begins to reside and reduce. You see, so we have to learn how to alchemize, how to turn enemies into alliances. It's a choice. It's something that we select. Now, what really stands behind this at this time of the Sun and Chiron conjunct, you obviously see that Mars and Pluto is conjunct. And that's exactly what that is. Not conjunct, but in opposition. And that's exactly what that is. There are opponents. But it doesn't have to be an opponent, because you could select that they become alliances through your wisdom, through your creativity. The full moon in and of itself, it indicates a build-up to a crisis where we will insist to harmonize that Libra placement. Libra asks, how can I harmonize? Negotiate. Find the middle ground. How can I harmonize? And we look into Ma'at, the principles of Ma'at, to find clues to that. Libra deals with ethics, not morals. Cancer deals with morals. Libra deals with ethics. So through looking into our ethical values, how can we harmonize? And that becomes part of the clues. The full moon indicates a burden because of the fullness of experiences. And that burden has to close out so that it can process as new wisdom, making space for new learning. But these experiences now have to be digested into wisdom through the full moon. And as you know, they go through the water points for that to happen. The closest water point to Libra would be Scorpio. Therefore, transmutation is part of how this will be. As the moon goes through Scorpio, that is when that action takes place, the transmutation of the burden of that full moon as it goes through Scorpio. We have a Scorpio stellium, Black Moon Lilith, Vesta, as well as Juno, making its way back into Scorpio at this time. Therefore, we have much support in accomplishing this transformation. And the transformation is founded upon the trust of the self, the institution of the self, the constitution of the self through Scorpio. Who do I trust? I am who I trust. Our own instincts, consulting our own instincts, consulting our own sense of security behind the fortress of self. Finding acceptance for what we cannot change. Finding courage for what we do have the ability to change. It's time to transform and transmute the burden of the full moon as it passes from Libra into Scorpio. Understand. Libra 23 degrees, heralding the coming light. A rooster, okay? The Sabian symbol is a rooster, heralding the coming light. Those of us first to feel the dawning of a new consciousness have the privilege and duty to shout about it, speaking out what we know to be true. A new culture is coming in, a new standard, a new way of seeing and being, a new story for Libra. But first it requires us to close the old story, full moon Libra. Full moon Libra. And yes, I have the disturbing news. This has a lot to do with females of society, especially those who are attractive, influential, charismatic, down with the culture, lots of likes and followers and validation. These are the main people that goes with South Node Libra, the Yas girl crowd. Toxic while very attractive. Understand? So the rooster in and of itself, this signifies a witness to the break of dawn. The break of dawn in the night, it looks exactly the same. You can't tell the difference. The rooster announces that the day has made victory over the night. And this also announces to us that the day is making victory over the night. So it's a proclamation of victory for us. That the dark night of the soul, these journeys that we have been on of pain and transformation, it now reaches a point to where we now are going to walk into the daylight of our experiences coming from the night. And just like the dawn and just like the night, it will feel like you're still in the night. It will feel like you're still in the dark. But a little time, you will start to see the sun will outline the mountains. It will outline the trees. And gradually you will begin to see the contrast of light and dark. So this is a turning point in your life where the daylight comes in, where the nighttime has now bowed out to the power of the daylight. And as Mars is preparing to enter into Leo, this couldn't be a better symbol of that light coming into play. Mars has been teasing us with the in and out of Cancer and Leo. When Mars is in Leo, we feel exhilarated, we feel vibrant, we feel alive, we feel charged with life, we feel strong and bold, capable. So just before Mars enters into Leo, this is the full moon that signifies that the night is over and the day begins. Speaking out what we know to be true. Understand? And as for speaking out what we know to be true, we're coming out of cancel culture, as you all know. And cancel culture came from South Node Libra. It came from feminists and it came from liberals and gays. That's where cancel culture came from. Gay people, feminists, and liberals. That's where cancel culture came from. That's who it was serving. That's who it was helping. That's who it was enabling. And cancel culture was stopping and blocking any truth from being spoken, any truth from moving. Social media platforms, everywhere in society, comedians end up, losing their winning streaks. Comedians can't even speak comedy anymore. Cancel culture was a hell of a regime that compromised the free speech of Americans, forcing everyone to change their language and their opinions to enable and uphold the desires and delusions of women and gay people. If you were not saying something to worship and uphold and praise females and gays, you were canceled. If you said anything that was criticizing of gays and women, and also, I forgot the most important one, Jewish people and African American females, you were canceled. You're not allowed to speak about any of those. These are the people who are protected by society. These are the people who are protected by the principalities in high places. These are the people who are protected by the powers of Satan. These are the people who you're not allowed to say anything against or about, or you will be canceled. You will be shadow banned. You will not make money. You will lose your momentum. You'll be left behind in Satan's world. Speaking out what we know to be true. So A different attitude is going to take place with the people in the consciousness of the people. Nobody's going to tailor their words and their conversations, their opinions to suit the feelings of females, to suit the feelings of gay people, to suit the feelings of all of those said people who I mentioned. Nobody's going to be pandering to feminists, pandering to liberals, pandering to people who took away their free speech. They're going to have to grow some balls and deal with it. No pun intended.